Hi everyone, and welcome to our week 4 live session for AIM. This is our last live session this month. And tonight's agenda, it's pretty lean. We're going to be covering the final project and the different pieces that you'll be taking from each of your IMAPs and putting into this final project. And then we'll be going over a demo of MailChimp, which is a free email marketing service provider tool. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and then, of course, be respectful to everyone here in attendance this evening. All right, the final project, the IMAP presentation. Now that you guys have your written plan in place, we're now going to focus on the presentation. So the final project, it's a standalone presentation. It's 5 to 7 minutes in length, which is probably the hardest aspect of this entire assignment because you're trying to get all of your ideas across in as few words as possible. And then, of course, there is an APA component, which is a requirement at the end of the presentation for all of the research you've done. So what are we taking from the IMAPs that we've worked on? So with our IMAP part 1, we're going to be pulling out the audience definition as well as the intentions that they may have. And then, of course, we're going to include the 4 approaches, marketing approaches, that is, for the personas. And in regards to time limit, this entire section should take you a maximum of 1.5 minutes to narrate. So as you begin working on this project and you start writing out a script, that's something to keep in mind from section to section. All right, next, right after the IMAP Part 1, we're going to be pulling some items out of the IMAP Part 3, and that includes brief overviews of each one of these campaign types, the broad, targeted, intention-based, and email newsletter sponsorship. And what you want to do here is for the broad and the targeted is give a brief overview where your ads are going to be placed, the types of ads that you're going to use, and then the messaging strategy. And then you'll also want to cover the goals and projections. So you'll want to include things like the conversion rate that you're projecting, excuse me, the average transaction value, as well as the exposure goal. And then, of course, you want to communicate some revenue metrics, most importantly, revenue, RPV, and MPV. Those are extremely important because what you're trying to do here is demonstrate that these campaigns that you've selected are going to be producing a positive ROI. So that's what you want to demonstrate here with each of the campaign types. With the intention-based paid campaign, this is a little bit different since we're dealing with branded keywords. So for this campaign, what a lot of students like to do in this presentation is create a table that showcases about 4 to 5 keywords. You don't have to put 6 to 8 like you did in your actual written paper. But if you give an example, of a table with the different keywords in it, that would be really great because then it's going to showcase exactly what you're going to be focusing this campaign around. Of course, you'll want to cover the cost and conversion strategy and the tie-ins with the broad and the targeted campaign here as well, and then a brief overview of the campaign goals and projections. And then finally, we'll wrap up with the newsletter sponsorship, and here you're going to describe the email newsletter partner company. You'll want to describe the type of ad you're going to be using in the newsletter, where the ad is going to be placed, what types of content the ad will be placed next to or near. And then, of course, you'll include an overview of the goals and projections. And then all in all, this should take you a maximum of about 4 minutes to narrate, so about 1 minute for each campaign type. And then finally, we're going to wrap up the presentation with the IMAP Part 2 and the landing page optimization strategy. So in this instance, you're going to showcase different landing page elements that you're planning on testing. Another good suggestion here is to use a table to showcase the different headline, offer summaries, calls to action, statements of trust, so on and so forth, just to give the viewer an idea of exactly what's going to be tested element-wise. You should also include the metrics and the test type. And of course, the metrics, we're keeping that really simple: conversions, revenue, conversion rate, clicks, so on and so forth. And this section, it should probably take you about 1 minute to narrate, but there's about 1.5 minutes left over here. So that's what you can give yourself, I guess, as a time limit for this section. But when it's all said and done, all of these time limits, of course, add up to 7 minutes. And then the final component for the presentation is an APA references slide. And this is needed at the end of your presentation, and you should not spend any time on it. So the presentation should end right on that slide, and they need to be formatted per APA guidelines. So in this case, I highly recommend the tool bibme.org. It's excellent, and it will actually, you'll compile your list of references in here, and then it will actually allow you to export them, and they will be formatted. Of course, you should still check the formatting. Sometimes they can make an error. I've seen it happen before, but for the most part, it is on point. And then, of course, please don't spend any time on the references. This is not needed. I can, of course, pause your presentation on that slide and take a look over each of the entries that you put on there. All right, that's the IMAP presentation. If you have any questions about this in the coming week, please let me know. I'm always more than happy to help. And now I'm going to do a demo on MailChimp, which is a free email marketing service provider tool. And I've already logged in. This is the main dashboard that we see here. And they have a lot of really great tutorials up here right at the very top, how you can use automation and integrate e-commerce platforms with it. This is a great tool to use because it's free up to the first 2,500 subscribers, I believe. It used to be 3,000, and they've backed down a bit because they're monetizing their business model and doing a pretty good job on it. But it is free, up to that subscriber limit. And then you also have a certain amount of sends that you can send out each month. All right, we can also take a look at our audience change. Of course, there has been no change. I haven't had anyone unsubscribe. I haven't had any bounces because all of my email addresses are valid. We also have campaign engagement. I haven't sent out a campaign in the past week, so of course nothing is here. But I did send out a campaign a few weeks ago. So I would be able to, of course, access data here by clicking the View Reports button. They also have some shortcuts. If you want to if you're stumped on how to use the tool, they have a really great knowledge-based search here. They have a lot of great blog entries here as well, and marketing guides for people who may have never done email marketing before. So there's a lot of really great free stuff in their platform. But what I want to show you guys is how to actually use this platform. And it's great because it makes it very easy for somebody who maybe doesn't have design experience or coding experience to create a beautifully designed email campaign with their own branding elements that they can send out to their list of subscribers. So before we create any type of campaign, we need to first start with a list. And I'm going to go here to the List tab. And I send out welcome emails to my classes each month. So I need to send out one for my class, this class actually, for the September section. So I want to create a list, and you want to be very specific with the name of the list and also the name of your email templates, because I have seen companies get their wires crossed when they were assigning a template to an incorrect audience segment. That happens from time to time. So you want to be very specific in the naming conventions that you create. So this is for my September class. And the default from address, this is going to be the address that a person would reply to if they click the reply button in the email that I'm going to be sending to them. And you want to make sure that this is an email address or account that somebody is checking regularly, because sometimes your customers will reply to, say, an autoresponder message, and maybe nobody checks that email account. Well, that can be a problem because sometimes people are trying to get in touch with a company that way, and you want to make sure that all of these channels are being answered and watched. So in this case, I'm going to put my email address. And then the default from name is, of course, my name. I'm the AIM course director. But from a business perspective, you, of course, would want to include your company name or perhaps your brand name. And that way it'll be instantly recognizable in the inbox. We also want to include a short reminder of how, basically how these people got on my list, but these people are enrolled in my class for the September section. So I'm going to change it from August to September, but you can essentially write any type of message right here to jog their memory. And then, of course, we have to have the contact information for our list, because this goes back to CAN spam compliance. And I'm going to put full sale. I don't know why it reverts back to my old course code there. But we want to make sure we have a physical mailing address in the footer of our email. And this goes to the CAN Spam Act of 2003. It is one of the requirements. So that way these fly-by-night companies and these these people working out of their basement, of course, cannot be, they can be tracked down. And this actually shows a form of legitimacy and trust in an email template. So this is really important to have. All right, for if you're using a form, you would want to enact double opt-in, because then subscribers would receive a confirmation email to confirm their subscription to your database. And then, of course, if you are you want to include GDPR fields in your forms as well. MailChimp makes that very easy for you to do here. All right, for notifications, this is the final step before we import our list. I recommend doing the daily summary, because if you're working with a very large list, if you get a one-by-one notification for each time somebody subscribes or each time somebody unsubscribes, you could actually flood your inbox with a ton of notifications. So I highly recommend the daily summary. That way you get one email. It's usually sent around 4:30 each day, and it gives you the rundown of what happened to your list. All right, we're going to click the Save button, and the next thing that we want to do is we want to import contacts. This is the easiest way to import a large group of subscribers. If you had, say, a one-off add to this list, you could just go to add a single subscriber. But I am going to import contacts because I have quite a few subscribers on this list. And I'm going to be using a CSV file. You can also use a tab delimited or text file, and then you can also copy and paste from a file, which I don't exactly recommend, because if you're classifying people's first names, last names, and email addresses in separate columns, there can be overlap, and I have seen email addresses get mixed up that way. So I don't recommend that way. And then, of course, if you're using an integrative service like Salesforce.com, a CRM tool of any sort, you can import them from there. But for tonight's example, I am going to be using a CSV file, and I have to upload it. And it's in my section already. I have it ready to go. Okay, then we click the next button. All right, and this is where we want to make sure all of our column names are correct. And in the spreadsheet that I'm importing, I have all of their first names in one column, all of their last names in another column, and their primary email address in a third column. So we want to make sure that the first names are matching up properly, the last names are matching up properly, as well as the email addresses, that these are all in the right columns. Because if you're using personalization in an email campaign, so we use something called merge tags. And say you wanted to include a personalized greeting in a message, you wouldn't want the last name to be mixed up with the first name. You wouldn't want to be addressing somebody by saying, "Hello, Bird," instead of "Hello, Michael." That just wouldn't make sense, and it would be very off-putting. So that's why we want to make sure that these things are matched up properly. All right, they are, and they're going to hit next, and we're going to import it. And here's our list. Now that we have a list in place, we can create a campaign. And we can create a campaign from scratch. If I went up here and selected this Create a Campaign button, I could do that. I could select a blank template. I could import my own template if I had created one, say in Dreamweaver. Or I can use a pre-made template, which I actually don't recommend doing, because every brand has certain style guidelines, and you really want to stand out and be instantly recognizable. With some of these pre-made templates, that's just not possible, because you would end up looking more like maybe your competition that way, or like every other company that sells, say, hats, for instance. So this is where I recommend starting from scratch, creating a blank template, or creating one of your own if you have design skills, and then importing it that way. I'm actually going to replicate a campaign which already has a template that I want to use, that I use from month to month. So I'm going to go down here to my welcome email from August, which is the email I sent out at the beginning of this class. And then if I click on the drop-down menu, I'll want to go to replicate. And this is where I can replicate the campaign and make any adjustments. I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. First thing I want to do is edit the name of the campaign. This is for my September class. Once again, be very specific in your naming conventions, because we don't want to get our wires crossed. All right, next we need to edit the list. And we want to make sure that it is going to the right list. So we want to edit our recipients. And I want to select my September 2018 section, and we're going to send it to all subscribers on the list. If I wanted to send it to a certain segment, say I had maybe 3 students arrive in the class after the class started, I would add them, and then I would create a segment for new ads, and then I would actually send out my welcome email just to that segment. I could do that way. I've had to do that before, actually. We also want to personalize the to field. We're actually calling out the subscriber, and with the merge tags, I use the first name and last name. And these special characters tell MailChimp exactly which first name and last name to associate with the email address the email is being sent to. That way it inserts the correct first and last names. All right, you're going to go ahead and save that. This is where you can update your subject line. You can also do A/B testing in here with subject lines. It's awesome. When I taught my email class before it became display and email in the bachelor's program, I used to actually have my students send out an actual A/B test with their subject lines and then present the results to me, and they would use MailChimp. So it's very easy to do. All right. For the content, if I wanted to update the content, I would just go here to edit design. And over here on the left side of the page, once it loads up, we'll be able to see my creative template. This is the HTML email that's going to be sent out. And over here on the right-hand side, this is where we would be able to edit any aspect of this template. So for example, if I wanted to edit the body section, I would click on this section over here on the left, and then over here on the right, I would then be able to edit any one of these. All right, I'm going to save and close. Also, if I wanted to add additional elements to this, I could not there. I could select any one of these. So if I wanted to change the color, the background, the CSS, I would be able to access that here. All right, I'm going to save and close. And the last thing I need to do is send out my campaign. I'm not going to send it right now because class doesn't begin until next week, but I do want to schedule it. And this is awesome because if you have an email going out during, non-business hours, you can set it ahead of time and it'll go out when you want it to. So in this case, I'm going to set it for next Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And that's the time zone I'm currently sitting in. They have something called Time Warp. This is a paid tool, of course, within MailChimp, and this would actually optimize the send time based on time zones. So if I want all of my students to receive this message at 9 a.m., no matter where they are in the world, on the specific date, MailChimp will make that actually happen. They also have something called batch delivery too, and this is great, especially if you're working with an extremely large list, because say you're running a sale or a promo that's going to drive a lot of traffic to your website. What MailChimp will do is they'll send out your email in batches. They won't send the message out all at once. So they'll break the list up in essence, and then send it out, at different times. So you can basically decide, how many minutes you want to send it apart, and then how many batches you want to break your list up into. And then of course that MailChimp will actually send that out. And then, of course, MailChimp also has another paid feature where you can optimize for inbox engagement. And that's where they would be keeping track of the time of the day and as well as the day of the week in which your subscribers are interacting with your email messages. And that way you can optimize based on that. All right, now that my campaign's ready to go, it's scheduled for August 26th. This is my confirmation page. If I go back to my campaigns tab, I will see that it is ready to go. It's going to be sent out August 26th at 9 a.m. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you in MailChimp are the reports tab. And this is, if I click on that, this is just a brief overview of the different campaigns and performance, my different open rates going all the way back to 2014. And if I wanted to look at a specific report, I could go down here. I'll go to my display and email class, and I can see what my open rate was. If I actually click on the percentage, it's 20% open it. I had one person open it twice. I can also see who didn't open it. These are all the people who didn't open the welcome email. I can also see my bounces. And in email marketing, there are two types of bounces. There are soft bounces and hard bounces. A soft bounce is when an email is returned, usually due to a temporary error, meaning maybe the subscriber's inbox is too full or their ISB is temporarily unavailable. Usually that can be corrected and the email can be sent at a later time. A hard bounce is when an email is returned, usually due to a permanent error, meaning maybe the email address doesn't exist anymore. And when that happens, MailChimp does something that we call scrubbing, and they scrub the address from the list, so they remove it from the list. Because if you continually send out emails that result in hard bounces, that actually is going to hurt your sender score, which is essentially your credibility in email marketing. And that can hinder your ability for your message to arrive in a subscriber's inbox and not the spam folder. So it's definitely a trust factor there. So we want to make sure we're always scrubbing our list of these hard bounces. But of course, MailChimp makes it very easy, and it actually does it for us. All right, no bounces, so I'm good there. What else do we have? We can also see if anyone unsubscribes, 0 unsubscribes. We can also see if there are any spam complaints, and 0 spam complaints. That's what we always want. If you had, of course, Google Analytics integrated, you would be able to track that here as well. But of course I don't, because I'm not using a paid version of the tool. But I do have some colleagues that do integrate Google Analytics, and they said it's fantastic because they can actually see their entire marketing funnel for email. All right, and that is MailChimp in a nutshell. Do we have any questions about MailChimp, about email marketing, final project? Great question. Do you have any suggestions for getting click rates up? I've had anywhere between 8% to 70% open rates. Okay, sounds like you've got great subject lines, but click rates have been anywhere from 0.5% to 4%. Okay, yeah, okay, calls to action. That's so important. I'm glad you're bringing that up. Okay, you definitely want to include calls to action, not just one call to action, but I recommend at least 3 within your actual email. Have at least 2 above the header, and of course 1 towards the footer, towards the end of the email. But yes, definitely a more prominent call to action will help. You can also, I know a lot of people, you could also play with the layout of the email too. A lot of people read an F-shaped pattern, so you can kind of think about where you want to place the calls to action within that. But yeah, calls to action are so incredibly important. You definitely want them to be almost create a sense of urgency. And because I mean, your open rates sound like they're pretty on par with the industry average. Industry average is about 18%. So yeah, definitely more prominent calls to action. Maybe definitely placement is another option that you have there to have something definitely more up towards the top above the fold. But yeah, and then also the landing page, you might want to look at the landing page as well, and if anyone's abandoning there too, because there could be some issues with the landing page. So you might have to do some testing there. So it's continuous though. In email marketing too, it takes a long time to see if these recommendations are going to take effect. Back when I was tracking email full time and managing a list in a database, it would sometimes take a couple months to see if a certain creative piece was even worth it or not, because it takes much longer to complete its life cycle. But yeah, definitely use calls to action to your advantage, for sure. Did that answer your question? Awesome. All right, anything else? Awesome. Yeah, if you guys have any questions whatsoever about email marketing, even after we leave here tonight, please let me know. I could talk about it all day. I did a lot of it in my last position, so and I keep really up to date on everything in the industry here. So it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So, all right, that's it for me though. But if you guys have any questions about the final project, email marketing, MailChimp, definitely let me know. I'm more than happy to help. And with that, I hope you guys have a fantastic evening, and I will be posting the archive probably within the next 20 minutes or so. So have a great one.